Hi there, welcome to Hearthside. This is take two. Apparently, it did not record. My name is Michelle. This is my blog, and I am talking about Auðumbla today. There's not a whole ton here because the only source for Auðumbla in the lore is from Proto-Indo, but just interested in who she is, why she exists at the beginning of time, and why she was important to the Elder Heathen peoples. So, if we're looking at the etymology of Auðumbla, the most common etymology seems to be hornless cow, which seems counterintuitive because pretty much all the depictions of her have horns now, given the first depiction of her was from the 18th century. But I find it interesting that all the depictions do have her with horns because a lot of types of cows, the females don't have horns, and she's clearly a female cow. So I have questions about that particular translation, even though it's the most common, as to why this is occurring. The other translations that seem to have some traction, one has to do with fate, and then one has to do with the desert, or her being like the destroyer of the desert, or the destroyer of desolation. And then there's another one about unused soil, which suggests fallow land, which both of those translations to me make a fair amount of sense because she is part of the creation myth. There's all this space and not very many living things. So those two actually make more sense than the first one to me, which is hornless cow rich in milk. Now, we do know that her milk was important to the story, but the hornless part, I'm just kind of is that right? And even scholars are saying how they really aren't sure what the first part of her name, the oath part, actually means, 100%, or what the etymology is of that part of the name. So just some things to keep in mind as we go forward. So is she a goddess, and why does she have horns? And my thought is, if she does have horns, which she seems to in all the depictions, maybe she's not a cow as in cattle, but only a cow as in being female. And that in fact she is an Orruk. So an Orruk is a wild cow from northern Europe. They're currently extinct and have been for some time. However, through genetics and DNA and stuff, they are trying to bring them back to help rewild parts of northern Europe. I don't know how far along they are with that, but just a cool fun fact. But yeah, there were wild cattle that lived in the forest and probably would have been a source of food for Proto-Indo-Europeans and even possibly into heathen times. The Auruks for Elder Heathens are represented by the Urus rune, whereas Fehu is more like cattle that would be domesticated. And how did Elder Heathens view Auruks? Well, they associated them with the forests and with wild energy, and they seem to see them as being strong and persevering. All of these characteristics make a lot of sense in a creation story. For those of you who are not really familiar with the story with Auðumbla, Ymir drinks the milk from Auðumbla for nourishment, and it seems that Auðumbla potentially predated Ymir, but there isn't a lot in the story. It says that Ymir slowly dripped from the rime, and Auðumbla sprang into existence. So how is it that she sprang into existence? Sorry about that. I just had to pause for a minute. There was some background noise. But how did Auðumbla spring into existence? We don't fully know, As I said, there's only the one source, but it seems as though she sort of appears now, whether it's out of Gununga Gap or just sort of appears walking out onto the rime. Like, it doesn't really say. Now we know that Auðumbla had 4 streams of milk that ran from her udders that nourished Ymir, and we know that she licked the rime, which was salty layer of ice frost, and out of it appeared Buri, who was the beginning of the Aesir. So it's really interesting to look at what these things mean in the myth, and there are some things that we notice about Auðumbla. First, she is a primordial cow of some sort, and potentially even the first being. Also, second, she is a cow, and by cow I mean she's female and almost a mother figure. And the third is she provides milk, and in particular, it's interesting to note it's in 4 divisions or 4 streams. And the last thing is that she uses her tongue to sculpt the gods into being. So licking them out of the rime or out of the ice. Now, a cow is definitely going to be interested in licking rime because rime is often associated with seawater and would be salty, just like a salt lick would be for domesticated cattle. And so the 4 things that I mentioned, the reason why I'm mentioning them is because then I want to compare them with some other figures in Indo-European cultures, and in particular with Hinduism, the cow goddess, and I apologize because I'm probably going to butcher this name, but Kamudhenu is the cow goddess. And Kamudhenu is an aspect of Devi, who is the divine mother. So already we're seeing she is a cow, a female figure, and a mother figure. Another form of the Devi is Vak, the goddess of speech. And this is important because in the Vedas, then speech comes in 4 streams, just like the 4 streams of milk. And in this case, it's speech that brings things into being, such as gods. So if we're looking at text that is a Hindu text here, then the gods came out of 2 of the teats of Devi, or Vak, the goddess of speech, who's an aspect of Devi, and the 4 teats represent aspects of speech. So it's a little bit different from our heathen story, but it makes a lot of sense to me from a heathen perspective as well, that creation would be related to speech, or at least to sound and vibration. Even if we're looking at the Big Bang, like, it's vibration and stuff that created things. And everything living has a sound, and even a lot of things that we would not consider living have sounds as well, whether or not we are able to hear them with our ears. So, sculpting the gods through speech. And we know that speech was important within heathenry as well, because when Odin, Vili, and Ve created mankind, they gave them breath. And what do you need for speech? You need breath. So just like really kind of cool that those aspects are there for this other being. Now, at what point the stories diverged, or if either of them were the original or part of the original or not, that is only open speculation. But it is clear to me that there was some sort of primordial cow goddess that was some sort of divine mother figure within Proto-Indo-European stories. And I think that Auðumbla, we could definitely say she is a goddess, and I think that she's probably a goddess who predated heathenry in some form. And that as heathenry became the most common practice, that she sort of faded into the background a little bit as more gods and goddesses appeared, but was still important enough to be still within that creation story. So yes, I think Auðumbla is a goddess. If you found it valuable, you could worship her, and cow worship was very common historically. Cows represented nourishment, creation, and good health, and also cows were associated with the idea of creating order out of chaos for early people, because having that food source would be able to sustain a larger population. For the most part, that's all that I had on this, as there aren't very many sources. The only other thing that is interesting is from Voluspa, and this is about naming of cows. And they say a cow is called heifer, she-calf, and romping lass, and Auðumbla, she is the first and noblest cow. So it's almost like Auðumbla can be a kenning for regular cattle, for female cows, because she was that important to the elder heathens. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You are welcome to check out the sources that I'm going to link below, and if you prefer the format of reading rather than the video version, I will link that below as well. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.